give a lesson to my 16-year-old self, I think one of the things that I have found very helpful is do best what you love most. I just think it's a very freeing way to be. Somebody once said it to me and I thought, wow. So it's all right to recognise what you're good at and concentrate on that and develop it and enjoy it. And it's all right to recognise that you can't do everything. So I think that's probably something that I'm glad I know now, and I probably couldn't have learned too soon. Actually, I would have done better if I'd learned it sooner. So do find out what you're good at, what God has gifted you in, what you have pleasure in. This is supposed to be a joy to serve like this. It is a joy. So do best what you love most. It's one of the things I would say.
One suggestion I'd make is that you find somebody who is a leader, who has considerably more experience than you, and set yourself to learn from them. In many cases, you may even wish to imitate them. I don't mean slavishly and mindlessly, but I mean watch what they do, watch carefully what they do, and then shamelessly steal from them. As you develop your own experience, bank of experience, and your own style and so on, that'll all develop over time. But just, so much of, as human beings, particularly when we were younger, so much of the way we learned was through imitation, through copying, mimicking. And that was, learning to speak, learning to use a knife and fork, and all these things one does when they're very, very young. But certainly I found exactly the same in ministry. I would just shamelessly copy, borrow from other people, or actually steal from other people. They say, don't they, that it's simply one thief stealing from another thief. Or somebody else put it, there's no copyright so long as you copy it right. So the Apostle Paul, writing to the Corinthians, said, imitate me, copy me. So I think it's perfectly legitimate, and it's a very healthy way to grow.
Great. One of the things I would say is don't do this stuff. Say that we're all involved in ministry, we want to do the stuff, we want to affect our generation, we want to do all that. Don't do it on your own. There's just so much more fun doing it in company. I mean, Jesus sent the disciples out in pairs. Partly it was just more effective, and partly it was more pleasurable. One needs companionship, and doing this stuff alone is too hard and sometimes too distressing. And so I would say always surround yourself with friends and like minds, and always stick with your local church. The local church is the hope of the world. For all its flaws, for all its failings, none of it is perfect, but it is. And therefore I would encourage anybody to say, I would say, stick with the local church and surround yourself with friends and like minds with whom to do ministry and indeed life.
Another piece of counsel I would give, well, actually, I'd steal it from something I heard from somebody I heard years ago. There was a friend of mine who was going to begin a new job in a new place in an area that he was unfamiliar with, and the people in which he was going to serve were very different from him, and he was understandably a bit apprehensive. And he went to see his bishop. He was a Church of England priest. And he went to see his bishop, and the bishop said, I've got two pieces of advice for you. Number one, say your prayers. Number two, be yourself. And I've always thought that's very, for whatever circumstance and the situation you're about to launch into, I think that's very good advice. Say your prayers and be yourself. You don't need to be anybody else. Just
Oscar Wilde said something about that, didn't he? Be yourself.
So if everybody else is taken.
Yeah,
is that right?
Yeah.
And rather than feel you've got to force yourself into some jelly mold that comes out in a certain shape, which is not you, or put on a straitjacket. Or do you remember in the Old Testament when David went off to meet Goliath, he tried borrowing Saul's armor. And Saul was a different build, different age, different stage, and he was clunking around. He absolutely defeated him. So don't feel that don't allow yourself to be trapped in a situation where you're like David, clunking around in Saul's armor. Different people do serve the Lord in different ways, and we've got to celebrate those differences. It's very important we celebrate them because we need them, and God made us different. What is it they say? No two snowflakes, am I right? No two snowflakes are identical. God is a God of variety and difference, and He loves it. Mm. So should we?
The last one I would say, just what I thought of, is just have fun. You know, the Christian life is hard. It is hard. And it would be too hard if it weren't that we could have fun in the way. And I do think that it's very important to enjoy what you do and to take pleasure from it. Probably my favourite quotation in the world is from a man called Lord Hailsham, who wrote a book when he was at Oxford as an undergraduate, and he called it The Door Wherein I Went. He became Lord Chancellor of England. I mean, he was a serious intellect. And he discovered the person of Jesus as an undergraduate at Oxford. And he said famously, I had never before thought of a laughing, joking Jesus. You know, telling funny stories, calling his friends nicknames and so forth. And he said, I'm persuaded we should have been enchanted, entranced by his company. And he was a man whose companions followed him for the sheer fun of it, said Hailsham. And then he went on to say, I think we should recapture our vision of that happy and glorious man, Jesus. And that's, I think, what I find very compelling, that it is Jesus for everything else that he was, and he was so utterly amazing. He was just fun to be around. He was wonderful company. He was just amazing. And I would love to think that as we do ministry and as we take life really seriously, which we do, we could have a lot of joy in the doing of it.